Every week we do a Q&A with interesting and accomplished members of the adaptive community to find how they persevered, how they innovated, how they built communities, and how they found solutions. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. Today we have Tanja Kari, who is a member of the International Paralympic Committee Hall of Fame, the Finnish Sports Hall of Fame. She's a 10-time Paralympic gold medalist, 12 medals total, is now the Director of Adaptive Sports and Recreation, overseeing the program Technology, Recreation, Access, Independence, Lifestyle, Sport, or Trails, as it is commonly referred to, but is doing some amazing stuff with the Nielsen Center here in Salt Lake City, the Rehabilitation Center. Just an amazing person, amazing athlete, but doing some really super cool stuff. Tanja, thank you for joining us.
Chris, thanks for the invite. I'm happy to join you and be part of this.
We were actually in the same class. We got inducted into the International Paralympic Committee Hall of Fame back in Vancouver in 2010. So we go way back.
We go way back. And honestly, I was thinking the other day that I think you and I were on the stage 2002 Paralympic Games closing ceremonies at the same time. For some reason, we were on that stage at the same time. I can't remember why.
I can't remember. There was a lot of buildup to those games. Then we competed. Then you got to closing ceremonies, and then it seemed like you were just going wherever people were pointing you. But can we take a step back? Like, you started in Finland. One of the things, there are two things about your career in Finland that kind of blew me away. One, as a cross-country skier, you were in the top 30. A cross-country skier missing her arm, you were in the top 30 in Finland of all cross-country skiers.
That is true, Chris, and typically, and that's like Finnish nationals, and in the women's category there, the typical participation numbers can be from 100 to 120, 30 skiers at the nationals. And yeah, I was on top 30 a few times. I think my best result was 24th, and it was like 15 seconds, and you are closer to position number then. So I was competing at pretty high level there, which was only good for me as an athlete because, obviously things have changed quite a bit. Today, there's more opportunities for Nordic skiers with disability to compete at different levels internationally. And, that way in Finland, I had races every weekend. I had 30 to 40 races in the season, and only, let's say, 5 to 10 out of those were related to Paralympic Games or World Championships or World Cups. So that was good fit for me. There's no reason why not to. My impairment is nothing.
Well, I mean, cross-country skiing, so much of it is about being symmetrical.
Mm-hmm.
And missing one arm makes being symmetrical a whole lot more challenging. So I'd imagine leg-wise, you had to do. How did you end up as a cross-country skier? When you first started out, did you gravitate toward that? You were saying hockey, and we're going to get into floorball at some point too.
Yeah, so I'm a 70s kid growing up in Finland, right? And cross-country skiing at that time was everything throughout my whole career time as an athlete. You could compare it with the status of American football in the US. So basically, good skiers were almost like gods and goddesses, and just admired. And it's just that world where skiing was everything, cross-country skiing specifically. So
that's why you decided to move toward cross-country skiing?
That's not really that, but obviously you are surrounded by that sport quite a bit in every way around. And I was really good at it. From the moment I put skis on, I think I was 3 or 4 years old. My mom said that, man, you really skied right from the get-go, like right there and then. It was just natural for me. And you are a little different kid in the 70s. You go to school obviously the other kids kind of look at you and they're like, well, that one has only one arm and such, and but if you're good at sports, and by the way, I was really good at every single sport we did. Sport is just my thing, or was my thing. So you are equal with the peers you have, with your school buddies, with your friends. It was easy to get to equal levels, sort to say, with them through sports.
And you went to, your high school was a sports academy as well, right? So how did that work? Was there an entrance to get into it?
Yeah, so still, as of today, if you want to get to this sports academy track, you have to have really good papers from school, which I think is super important for every athlete to remember to do the school part well. But then there's specific application process at that point. So they review your school grades, obviously. They review your training commitment, how long have you been training, obviously results. It's just paper, black and white. This is how I've been skiing. These are my times. This is how I did, and all that put together, and then an interview process, and then there was the selection process. So I made it through. Amongst, I was the only one at that point who had impairment, disability, but I made it through, and I was able to combine my education and training for the next 3 years really well, and that was pretty crucial in my development as an athlete.
When did you know that you were going to be in sports? Because it's one of those, you knew that you wanted to be an athlete, and you were always a good athlete coming through, and you went through and you trained with the top athletes in Finland in the marquee sport. But it looked like from looking at your resume that you had decided early on that you wanted to be in sport as a career as well. When did you make that decision?
It started naturally to go to that direction, perhaps because I had the interest of every single sport. And by the way, in cross-country skiing, you combine so many sports in training, so that it's kind of easy to actually understand how cool the other sports are too.
So what do you mean by combining all the sports?
So you do a lot of, let's say, obviously roller skiing as a trial and training. You can do kayaking, weightlifting, running, even playing soccer sometimes. And you just can combine multiple sports to build up your training week. So naturally, I got familiar with other sports as well, but I was just always fascinated by sports. And then, obviously it took different dimensions. Like when I headed to the University of Jyväskylä, I was so set that I'm going to go with the coaching track. And instead, I changed it to more like sports management and sociology and that type of stuff. I'm like, I'm full of heart rates and max VO2 and this and that already from my training and competing. And I'm kind of starting to go away more from that coaching track at that point. And I decided to start, I just started to think sport bigger than just the kind of the training and the competition world of it.
To get more into the sports management side of it, because you've been an athlete and an athlete ambassador, but you've done so many other things. A classifier, working with WADA, working with so many different organizations, with the International Paralympic Committee, with Salt Lake County Parks and Recreation, with FIS, with it's amazing. So did you is that what you mean, like going away from the coaching side?
Well, not specifically. Like I still have been coaching, and I'm actually coaching as we speak too. But to have coaching as your kind of professional career, let's say that's the track that I shifted away, and that was by choice. And rather go to that management side more. So that is what I meant. I was very set. I was so deep down inside, just thinking all of the training and coaching and biomechanical sides of things, and and techniques and all of that. And then I had that year where I'm like, there's more cool stuff, super interesting stuff too in sports. Like I want to explore a little more. And I kind of also found myself being in the situations where I was speaking about different things and aspects of sports. And I'm like, well, this might be my thing. Maybe I should pursue more this route. And that felt good. And that's what I did.
Was it partially because of the need? I mean, it sounds like you got the ball started kind of rolling and you recognized that you were good in that position, but also some of the need of the Paralympics, of somebody with a disability, which, because a lot of your history, it sounds like you went through and you were the only one.
Yeah, at that point, things have changed, as you know, so much as well. We see athletes with disabilities, Paralympic athletes, Paralympians everywhere compared to the days back then. But yeah, I could say that I was to a degree a pioneer in a lot of these areas in Finland. And, we had great Paralympic winners and also in cross-country skiing prior to me, but the media and the kind of the presence of them wasn't that much. There wasn't that much media around them. And I do think for me, it was easier sort of, and I'm saying easier because every athlete to a degree does need that media presence in order to build the circumstances to train around them. But it was easier for me to sort of get that attention because I did compete with able-bodied athletes. So it was very easy for people to compare, like understand where am I with my skiing, what level of skiing am I performing here when they have the able-bodied name there, and that able-bodied name happens to be in our Olympic team or whatsoever and on top of the world. So it's easy for them to put it in kind of bigger context that this is where we are going.
Right. It's not apples and oranges. These are apples and apples.
There's no questions. That's the result and that's it. As simple as it is. And I think that is one reason why I sort of did become the pioneer of this work to a degree in Finland at that point.
What was it like going from sort of growing up and competing with able-bodied athletes for the most part to then competing in the Paralympics? What was the shift like for you in terms of recognition, in terms of competition, in terms of how you saw yourself, really?
It's interesting because I grew up first without even knowing that there is such a world like Paralympics, or there's someone else with one arm also skiing, So it was a little bit of a interesting kind of reality. First of all, you are in the cross-country skiing world in Finland where it's everything, like I said. And there's skiers left and right. Everywhere you go, there's skiers. You go to the Paralympic world and you realize that, okay, there's some of us with one arms, there's some of us with no arms, and then there's portion of a leg missing. I'm just talking that language that was in that 14-year-old head at that point. And then they're all racing against each other and no one knows about us.
Right.
So you start to think like, well, what's the point of that? Like, this is cool and this is amazing what we have, but it's a story that is just not told anywhere. So that I think that was one of the biggest shocks to a degree. And then, I had already early on gotten used to a kind of a system, like you have your trainings, I was part of a sport club, you are in a team, and there's races. And then we didn't quite have that systematic system in place back in the days yet on the Paralympic side. But that is completely different story today. I have to put that in at this point too.
Right. It's a far more similar training system for the Paralympics than it was for for the Olympics, or than it was now than it was back then. And the thing is that that's partially due to people like you, right? That you're coming in and you have this foundation of training.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And actually, you know, if we look at like results back in the times I was racing in the Paralympic world, I was quite far ahead from my competitors. And I actually remember even getting comments like, you shouldn't be here because you're so good. And I'm like, well, I'm going to respond to that you should go and train more and come back. You know, if that's the approach, you know, and you know, athletes can be pretty cruel to each other, and you know, you can try to interrupt your focus at the moment, but at the same time, yes. But if you look at whether it's able-bodied or whether it's Paralympic side, you know, the top peak, it's pretty narrow out there, and that's it. And that's always going to be part of elite sport. There's no way around it. The more we build around that, you know, top peak, the better off we are in every way around. But it is always probably going to be pretty narrow.
It's always going to be narrow. I mean, that's the definition of it, right? When you get to the top, there are very few people at the top. But that said, we need the trailblazers like you who show people the possibility. You know, they were saying, oh, you're too good, you shouldn't be here. And I love your response of, no, you should train harder. Like, I've shown you what I can do, and there's nothing that says that you can't do it better than I'm doing it. You just haven't had the training.
Yeah. And you know, I always have to like tell people the fact that in my mind, then at the end of the day, made me an athlete is that I absolutely fell in love with what I do with my sport. You know, not every single training feels good, right? And it shouldn't. You should, to a degree, people say that you're from the sport. That doesn't look fun. It feels horrible and it's like disgusting. But you know, it's such a beautiful sport, and I absolutely love it every way around. And I fell in love with every single thing I do. I was nothing but looking forward to every single training session, which quite often was 2 to 3 times a day. And that's the moment I kind of was okay with my sport. It wasn't only like result driven and gold medal driven, but it was, what am I in this moment with my sport? And when that was all lined up, my results got so much better on the result list at that moment too. It was incredible improvement that happened.
How did that work? Because I mean, one, we've got to give a little bit of background in some ways. Nordic skiing, cross-country skiing, is one of the hardest sports out there, in that you're using both your upper body and your lower body. So you're using both systems at the same time, and your heart kind of caught in the middle is like, oh, wow, I have to send blood and oxygen to all of these systems to keep this whole thing running. So it is really, really hard. What's the part that you fell in love with? I mean, you talk about you fell in love with the sport because it can be a really painful sport, but is it the identity, your identity with regard to the sport, or being able to push yourself beyond what you thought you could do, or what really attracted you to the sport?
It has multiple dimensions, but yes. So we have in stand-up skiing, cross-country skiing, you have classic and you have free technique, right? And within each one of those, you have multiple techniques. And then depending on the snow conditions, on the course and the spot on the course where you are, you just change techniques, and you kind of, it becomes this beautiful dance to say. I don't know if anyone's described cross-country skiing as dancing, but it really is. And honestly, every cross-country skier should go dancing because it helps you in this sport. But it is technically very demanding sport, but that's the beauty of it too. And obviously then the other side is, you know, all the sports that I described, and you have to put quite a bit of hours in your year for this sport. I learned to love the feeling of training. Like it didn't matter really what training it was and what sport I was using. And the moment you are in, you felt this, I know you have felt this because I've seen you skiing. When you are in your prime condition, it just seems like you are just in this complete flow, and it's just, even if it's not easy, it feels like everything's easy. You're like partially just breathing through your nose, right? Even if your heart rate is 180 or whatsoever. So all of that combined, it's just like I fell in love with all of it. And I some people ask sometimes, like, if you could do a couple of things, like what would they be? I'm like, one is a training week or two where you would just train and sleep and eat, right? Just to go back to those times. And the other week would be helping AC/DC to get ready for a concert.
Those are two slightly different things.
Yeah, they are. I don't know. It would be fun.
How would you help AC/DC to get ready for a concert?
I don't know. I would carry the loudspeakers and help setting up the stage. And I don't know. I love the band. I would do anything.
That is awesome. That is absolutely, that is not an answer that I was expecting.
But those are like two kind of dreamy things. Obviously, there's multiple others, but those are kind of like probably something that I won't get back. Or I never really helped AC/DC to get ready. But
no. And that one I can't relate to, but it's interesting that you say to go back and do a week of training where it is just all of the training, which from the outside can seem like so much work.
Yeah.
That, oh, you're doing 2-a-days and, or whatever, 2 or 3-a-days or whatever. And you're eating, you're sleeping, you're training, and that's pretty much it. You take a shower here and there. But that, to me, it's funny when I look back on it, those are the times that I miss, are the training times more than I miss like the top competition times. And it sounds like it's the same for you.
Yeah, it is the same. It's, once you choose that life to a degree and you do the commitment, and you pour yourself into it. It's if I give 100% of myself to what I do, you most likely will see the result, and you most likely get the award. In my case, the award was this being one with what you do and loving it. So it's training week or two, Chris. We have to figure it out.
we can create a camp or something like that, a retreat. Get off of all your devices and just go out and train. And
yeah,
how much did that mentality of being an athlete who loved the training and being at one with yourself, how much did that translate to what you're doing now, where you're giving opportunities to, in the outdoors to people, with activities, teaching people activities? Certainly we want to talk about the Tetra ski as well too, where you're working with the technology, but how much did that mentality translate into what you're doing now?
I think it does quite a bit. And, obviously, here I am reviewing my work with you. And I honestly think that some of our participants should be answering some of these questions. But, getting into this program and we basically build it from just pure thoughts and ideas. And here we are 16 years later. But it was an eye-opening to understand how, to a degree, easy for me it was to build what I built around my skiing, in the context of my impairment being very minimal. There's much bigger things going on in this world than this. But I am trying to do everything in this program like I was doing my training. It's not okay to just have someone get in a bike or a ski or a kayak and let's just go have fun. Let's make sure we have the right piece of equipment for you. Let's make sure you're fitted right into it. And let's make sure that this piece of equipment supports your ability, your impairment to perform the best, so that you are not fighting with the equipment, but the equipment is supporting you doing what you want to do. Majority of the able-bodied people can go to a sports store or whatever and trial out some equipment and go with what they like. It's not the same thing in adaptive sports world. That's why we build the opportunities for them to trial out, to get fitted, to have multiple sessions in. It can't be just a one-time experimental thing. And then we go from there. That's the starting point.
So what exactly do you do? So we talked a little bit about, or I talked a little bit in the introduction about the Trails program, but then you're also working with the Craig H. Nelson Rehabilitation Center as well, which was it last week? Did you give us a tour last week or was it the week before? I forget now.
Ago, yeah, you guys visited and we saw just a minor portion of it, but this program is out of the Craig H. Nelson Rehabilitation Hospital. However, we welcome other parties. You don't have to be our patient to be able to get involved with the program. Basically, membership is complex physical disability. Anyone having that can participate in the programming. And I always like to kind of describe us as a multi-sport club. We have
a multi-sport club.
Yeah,
okay.
We have multiple sports running year-round. Some are seasonal, some are year-round programs, and multiple times a week. So no one-time thing is in this program. So it's basically a sports exercise program, education program built to support folks with complex physical disabilities and gives them opportunities to create an active lifestyle.
Exactly. And so you're getting, with the rehab center, it's a spinal cord injury center. So these are people who, in a lot of ways, their lives, their perspective on their lives has changed completely. I mean, I remember, for me, it was a question of, could I still be active? Sports was a huge part of my life, but yet the association, because you don't have any education as you're coming through life, you're not thinking, oh, well, I know about people in wheelchairs and I know what they're going through. I mean, obviously the Paralympics are far more visible now than they were when we started, but how much is the sport part integral in the rehabilitation of the individual?
I think, yeah. By the way, we spinal cord injury is one of the diagnostic groups that we see at the rehab center. There's other ones too: TBI, stroke, amputees, and so on and so on. So what this actually reminds me a little bit of the Stoke Mandeville and Paralympic game starter, Sir Ludwig Goodman, back in late 60s and such, and introducing just finding sports for patients who had spinal cord injuries. That's how the whole Paralympic movement started, right? And
back in 48, really, right? So it was 1948.
Yeah,
parallel to the what became the Stoke Mandeville Games, started the same day that London did back in 1948.
Yeah, you're right. I'm 20 years late. So basically we built into the sports and exercise is playing as crucial role as any other rehabilitation activities, PT, OT, speech, and so on. So we have a whole team that is dedicated to promote sports and exercise in the rehabilitation team. And quite often, like, for example, last Friday, I met with 6 inpatients down at the mobility garage that you visited.
Right.
And showed them some pieces of equipment, talked about the program. We looked at some videos, and we talked about the fact that, yes, your life has changed, and it has changed a lot, which is not something that we wish, or we can predict, or we can expect to happen, and it can happen at any given point to any of us, right? And, you know, we tease out if there are sports people like. Surprisingly, a lot of the newly injured patients had biking accidents in Idaho. So I don't know what's going on with biking in Idaho, but that was majority of the patients that I saw on Friday.
And is this mountain biking or road biking?
Yeah.
Mountain biking.
So we did take a look at mountain bikes, road bikes. There's kayaking, sailing opportunities, skiing opportunities, depending how far post-injury you are. And we talked about the fact that, you know, a lot of the equipment is a little different than you used to do prior to your injury, but it's still worth giving it a try. That it's you have to be open to see this in a different eyes. And obviously we can't force anyone to get into this track, but I try to tell people that usually people have been pretty thankful that they did give it a try, and they majority of the people do stick with it. There's very few people who never want to get back into anything, and that's, I'm not judging them at all. That is obviously up to these people themselves to make the decisions, but we are there to support in this first experiment, and then get into regular recreation exercise programs if they choose to do so. And I think getting it right from the moment we get into something is crucial. That's where that fitting and the multiple options for equipment and the multiple options of opportunities play a huge role.
Yeah, I mean, like, because it's so easy to do it badly, right? It's not like if you want a bike, it's not like you just go to your local bike shop and get a hand cycle. That doesn't happen. But it's easy for things not to fit correctly. So for you to go out and wear, you know, cross-country ski boots that are 3 sizes too big to go out and cross-country, like even you are not going to have a very good time going out and skiing like that. But sometimes that's what people have in the past, that's what people have experienced, is kind of getting introduced to a sport, but not necessarily getting a chance to really fall in love with it or feel like you're connected with the equipment. So what I was amazed at when you gave us our tour was the garage that you're talking about, where you have the ability to help fit people into their equipment. It's not just one size fits all. And good luck. Go ahead. We hope you have a great time. This is, we're going to ensure you have a really good time. Where did that, I mean, obviously there's a huge need for that, but it's also a really challenging thing to achieve. How did that come about, that you were able to give people such a great opportunity right at the beginning?
So it's a lot of brainstorming, and there's a full team behind this. It's not only me as a sports person figuring this out, but we have, like I described earlier, PTs, OTs, medical doctors, respiratory therapists, whoever is needed, figuring it out. And for me, it is super crucial to be able to understand the level of injury or the disability or the diagnosis we are talking about, to put it in this context of sports and equipment, right? So often you see we have, let's say that we have a bike fitting coming up. We study the background of this participant. We figure out, do we need here a PT for that as well? Do we need an OT? Who do we need here for that? We lay out the full table of different pieces that we can swap out from these bikes or whatever the equipment is. Plus, we can start out with 10 different options of bikes, and we start to tease out, like, which one do we go with to start with? And, you know, once participants get stronger and better, depending on the level of injury and what the diagnosis is, we might change into other equipment then that might work better at some point. And you know, honestly, the ideal situation is, which happens often, that after a couple of years, we figured out that this is exactly your piece of equipment, and then there's phenomenal grant grants and foundations in this country available for people to apply for their own piece of equipment. And this is part of the process too, that we really want to create people as independent as possible with us, so that, you know, it's kind of like a good coach, Chris, you know this. A good coach makes him or herself not needed at some point. So, you know, with those cases who can move on and sort of leave us and graduate, that's job well done, I feel like. You know, with some cases, and that's with the tetra ski and stuff, and you're talking about such high complex level injuries that, you know, to a certain degree, the support system is needed at all times, but that is okay too.
It is okay. I mean, it's great, the objective, right? The objective of you as the coach, you know, you, and I'm saying you, the collective you, to effectively make yourself obsolete, to promote that sense of independence, to get somebody started and let them be able to move on their own. To me, that is a great and noble pursuit too, you know, because sometimes it's really hard, because as the support people, you want to feel like you're needed all the time, but to know that your objective is, no, we want to help this person to be independent and to be able to create effectively on their own. How does it work? You've mentioned the tetra ski. This is, and we've been talking thematically in some ways about this, like that you were able to become a cross-country skier without any adaptation. You don't wear a prosthetic arm, you just use one pole and two skis. And so it's kind of like, you know, I'd imagine there was a learning curve early on. It sounds like you were pretty good at it, but you might have learned the balance part of it so early on that you don't remember the difficulty, or you were just such a little kid that difficulty is just difficulty, and you're like, oh, who cares? So we just go. But as we talked about it, the higher the level of injury, the more adaptation is needed, the greater the adaptation. And you've been able to develop the tetra ski, which, can you describe what the tetra ski is? Because this is different than anything else that we've ever seen.
Yeah, so the tetra ski was developed here at the U between our medical team and mechanical engineering, computer sciences, and you know, this is an academic campus, as you know, and we are an academic hospital, so we have a lot of resources where we can tap into these kind of projects. But we realized probably early, like 2000, as early as 2006, 7, 8 there, that, you know, there is certain amount of adaptive sports equipment available. And as we spoke, mostly you order online without knowing what you get. And that's it. And, you know, the rest of the group that can't use that equipment that is commercially available are then just forced to be moved by someone else. So you are basically getting dependent rights, correct?
Sure, right.
So that as a whole philosophy felt so strange to us, that something needs to happen here. And our participants and patients challenged us, like, I don't want to sit in a boat and someone rows me around the lake. I don't want to sit in a ski and someone skis me down the hill. That very true. So we started to brainstorm, and Dr. Rosenblut is a great pioneer in this. We talked about pioneers early on, so he's the pioneer of this. So, hey, let's build a ski that can be operated by people who don't have the upper core, who don't have the hand function necessarily. How about if they only have the breath control and mouth control, and that's all that is left. We have to figure out something to fill the hole that this world has, that there's absolutely nothing for these people. So that's how the whole philosophy and the idea developed. So the tetra ski has basically the technology that power chairs have. Some people use sip and puff, operating the power chair, right? Some people use the joystick and they operate the power chair. The Tetra ski has electronic actuators underneath the seat frame, and those actuators respond to the commands from the skier, whether it's through zips and puffs or whether it's through the joystick. And those skiers decide their own terms, right? The only, you know this as an alpine skier, the only way to slow down is to make turns, right?
Right.
Unless, and we know what the other alternative is.
Well, that was the alternative when we were first learning, right? Is fall.
Yeah.
Fall. That's the way to slow down. I mean, there are other alternatives too, and we don't need to get into those.
Yes. So the skier is in charge of the ski, whether they are using just their mouth to control the ski or the joystick. And we have the same technology also developed around the sailboat too. So
this is high level quadriplegics. So people out there, you know, Christopher Reeve kind of thing. I mean, not quite as high, but it's something that somebody like him could have done it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
With a sip and puff. Mm-hmm. and the sip. So you're pushing the air out and effectively telling the ski to turn left, or sucking it in and telling the ski to turn right. And what's different, I mean, you mentioned that it's similar to the power wheelchairs, but this is in a far more dynamic environment where you're going down, there's a side hill, there's a bump, there are, you know, whatever it is, but it's also, it's fulfilling on a really personal level for the individual, because you know, I mean, if I as a paraplegic thought, okay, well, I wonder if I'm going to be able to do anything physically. And, you know, I'd seen the Boston Marathon. I'd seen those guys race in wheelchairs in the Boston Marathon. So at least on some level, I knew that was the case. I'd never seen a monoski until I got into a monoski.
Yeah. But
this, when you look at breaking a high vertebrae in your neck, you think, okay, well, I can't move my hands. I can't do this. But suddenly you're giving them back an opportunity to interact with the mountain in a way that people don't necessarily get a chance to. I mean, a lot of people don't get a chance to do. What's the response? What's the transformation for the people who get into the Tetra ski?
It is incredible, Chris. It's you know, you put it in very well in words that we are hearing, but people, the best feedback is to see the faces and them saying that, you know, it's me skiing. This is skiing. You know, it doesn't have to even have more words than those three. This is skiing.
Yeah.
You know, it tells it all. And it's not the fact, and we know what we are after here, to create, to give an opportunity for these people to do something they are in charge of. And in this case, we are talking about sports, right? And they can decide, and the best part also is for especially for people like you and I who understand the meaning of training, and the more they ski and train, the better they come in this. So it is exactly the same. And some of these skiers, we hosted our first race. I mean, that was absolutely naturally the next step. After we had done this recreationally for multiple years, we are like, let's go and race. Like, these people, we have to be able to look outside of the box and start to define athletes in new ways and see who all can be athletes, right? And unfortunately, and I challenge the whole Paralympic world, we need to have more opportunities for individuals with this level injuries to be athletes and compete. I don't think we are doing good enough job in that. And this totally is one sport where we are doing it right now. And you should have seen the race. Oh my gosh, people are like multiple people within a second. some people crashing down the gates and some nicely going around them. And at first they were a big trial and it was phenomenal. I was just like, you know, I'm kind of known as a hardcore, no emotions person to a degree, like stoic Finnish person, but I was speechless. I was just in tears when I watched it. It touched me big time.
Well, it has to, because this is sport for people who don't have the ability, for some of these people who don't have the ability to feed themselves.
Yeah.
So, but yet they're able to go down the hill. And, you know, it begs the question that you've been an athlete for so much of your life, and it's so easy. You do so much of the training. It's so easy for us to look at the physical side of what you do. You're building that physical side. But I think we also know that the most successful athletes are the ones who are the strongest in their mind.
Yeah.
And so it's not the physical, it's the mind. And so this is giving an opportunity, giving that mental opportunity to perform, to replicate. I'm trying to describe it in a way, but to be able to have the mind and the body connected again. And so that the strength in their mind is able to make the physical happen.
Yes, it's up to them, and it's up to them to think the course and think, what do I need to do to win this race? I'm not saying that every athlete came there to just win the race, right? But it got so competitive, Chris, that side was there. You could feel it. You could totally feel it. And not only they cannot feed themselves by themselves, there's a machine breathing on behalf of some of those skiers. So there were a couple people on ventilators racing. So yes, and the feedback we got from all of the skiers is like, oh my God, there's just no way in this planet I would have imagined that I would be racing, and I'm not the person on the sidelines. There's hundreds of people cheering for me and watching me racing. And, you know, at the same time, it's not all about that race, obviously, in this case. It was to a degree, I sense that this is a like big message to the world that, you know, when we have all of these technology in this world, when we have all of the system place for able-bodied people and for people like you and me, Chris, too, why not to have it in place for people who haven't had the opportunities for way too long?
To allow them to flourish. And it really is flourishing, because watching, it's not merely a direction change. There's actually, the ski is doing what the ski is supposed to do. The ski is on edge underneath the tetra ski, and is actually, so it's actually, because for me as an alpine skier, there's an aesthetic, there's a beauty. I mean, you talk about dancing in cross-country ski. I often talk about alpine skiing as being like ballet in some ways, that it's all based on time, right? The only way you win is based on time. It doesn't matter how good you look, but there's a part of it that what you do physically is how you actually go faster. And there is an inherent beauty to that. And not only is this moving from the top of the sport, but there's a beauty to that, and a physical beauty, which is amazing. How does it work on the sailing side? Because you've done the tetra ski. Is the sailing as far along as the tetra ski is, or not?
Tetra ski is a little further than the sailboat, but the sailboat is well on its way there. A little fine tuning here and there, and it's totally ready to go. But it's, you know, but it's the same concept. With sailing, you play with the wind, right?
Right.
So our participants are able to furlough the sail and then control playing with the wind with it.
Really? So they're able to work the tiller and trim the sails, and that kind of thing. And
and if there is no wind, let's say we sometimes hit that that especially the morning hours at these mountain lakes. Then there's kind of a motor that you can. The motor is meant to get you off the shore and to the lake, and you open up your sails and find the wind and start to sail. But if there is no windy day, you can still cruise around with the motor too. So those who let's play that we don't have any windy day and there's no sailing. There's still a way to go around the lake for someone who can't use the kayak necessarily, and roam around with the motor and the sailboat.
Sailing is a sport that to me is such a mental sport. It's such a, which way is the wind coming? Which way is the tide going? It's amazing. There's so many different thought processes that go into sailing well.
Yeah. I'm not a sailor myself, and I don't know the sport very well, but gladly I'm happy that we have a team who does know sailing well. So, but yeah, it is, and it's. I mean, even the fact that you are just up in the mountains and on a lake, and you are in control of that boat itself. And this is something that we haven't pushed competitively, at least yet. And we know that what is sailing status in the Paralympics now? It's out, I think.
Is it? I don't know.
That's what I think. But anyway, we haven't pushed that competitively. But sailing it's a huge sport, and people there's definitely it's its own kind of world. And we've had some sailors who are back to sailing. They used to sail, they are back to sailing. We have some who are learning the sport, and everything is good. No, it doesn't matter what it is, everything in between. It's all good. We are here to kind of provide the opportunities and support people with their goals. And whether it's skiing or sailing, and whether you pursue the competitive route or not, if we can somehow support that journey in between and make it right. And it, once people take it to competitive level, at some point it's kind of up to them more than to us. But with this kind of technology development and with these type of higher level injuries, there is going to be a huge role for people like us to make it happen. And that is kind of a one side of the competitive world that we have to rethink too.
Well, I mean, the competition is going to happen.
Yeah.
You know how that works, right? People start doing then okay, let's compete. Let's see if we can go faster. And sailing is an interesting one that is based more on the boat than anything else. And if you give somebody the opportunity to race against like boats, then they have a level playing field. And so that's even more than the skiing. It doesn't mean that you're racing against someone with a disability or not. You can just go and race against someone who has a similar boat. So it'd be really interesting to see how that progresses, and just opening up an entirely new world. You guys have done such amazing things. How have you been able to do this? I mean, it sounds like you asked the question of, how do we make it? How do we make it work? How do we open it up? But it's also, I mean, you've risen to the top of rehab centers throughout the country in a relatively short period of time. How have you been able to do this, like with some of your partners? And because, I mean, if you're talking about having 12 bikes and you're having all these possibilities of you can do this and we can do that, that costs some money. I mean, to have
that cost, and those 12 bikes, by the way, was just example that we might pull into fun fitting. We actually do have 40 plus bikes. But, it's the University of Utah Hospital and the Rehabilitation Center has been extremely supportive and really sees this as a part of the mission. With patients, we need to be able to provide this, and we have been successful with grant writing. Getting all the equipment is grant funded at this point, and we are not charging any participant any fees for any of the activities we do. We are right now, in order for us to get more of the tetra skis and the sailboats out in the world, we are hoping to raise more funds to be able to do that. and some programs are able to get some of that stuff from us. So it's built here. We obviously buy the parts too, but it's built here. So there is a cost obviously for us to build these things, but we are not making any money out of them. We just simply want to get them out and get the opportunities to expand.
Because you're doing R&D in-house, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the frame itself travels here from Tessier company from France. So it's a little bit modified from the snow cart, which is the manual version, and that is where the equipment. That's probably the only commercially available ski that can accommodate the highest injury levels that there is right now. But then there's nothing from that on, because you still need your wrists and your biceps to do the snow cart. So this year builds us modified frames, which we buy, and then everything else is put together here in-house.
And it's different. So I'm not positive about this. So I'm asking the question with the snow cart, it's not necessarily articulating, right? Where like the skis underneath the cart are not necessarily articulating. Is that something that is different with what you're doing, where you have that independent action that is making the ski turn left or right?
Yeah, so it is kind of based on the snow cart, Chris, but obviously there's a lot of science now behind with the software, and that's more our engineer work to make sure what are the skis doing with different commands, so that things are not overdone or underdone or not reacting too fast. There's different levels. There's beginner and advanced levels, and that then correlates like how fast do the actuators react and what are the angles that we are getting depending on the level of the skier. And you can start, obviously everyone starts with the beginner, but then they progress to advanced at some point, typically.
Right.
And that then determines what kind of angles are we getting.
Well, I would imagine that is the exciting part that you're probably waiting a little bit for, is the people someone who can out ski the equipment to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And you have to go back to the drawing board and figure out, okay, how do we get back ahead of the athlete, which I would think would be really fun. This has to be for you, the journey as an athlete, as a person involved in sport, in coaching, in officiating, in working with the anti-doping, you have so many hats with classification, which obviously is a huge part of the Paralympics. How does this bring it all kind of full circle for you? I mean, this seems like it's tapping into everything that you do and everything you are.
Yeah, it does. A lot of the stuff that I do, that I've done with WADA, with IPC, they're obviously volunteer positions, but they are something that we all throw passion in. When you tackle into something that matters, you throw yourself into it, right? If you feel like you have things to give, you throw yourself into it. This program is something that it's I am so grateful for everything that I have gotten from sports. And I think there should be more and more people who have the opportunity to feel the same way. And that is, in its simplicity, what I feel like. But at the same time, all of this stuff needs to be done the right way. And I'm not saying that we do everything absolutely perfectly all the time. There's lessons to learn every day. There's new things to learn, as long as you keep your mind open to things. But that's it. People deserve opportunities. People need opportunities. Sport is an awesome opportunity, and there's so many people who need to get more involved in this. It's we for years a lot of people, certain groups of people were closed out because there was no opportunities for them, and it's our job to change it.
It is. And you mentioned earlier that you loved your sport. You loved every moment of your sport. It wasn't trying to get to a place. It was enjoying enjoying the activity, enjoying the pain, enjoying gaining new skills. And I think it's absolutely wonderful that you're getting to take that and share it with somebody else. So thank you.
It's a pretty cool job. I can't believe it's a job. It's awesome. I love it.
Well, keep it up. Tanja, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for what you do within the community. I mean, this is just absolutely spectacular. And I can't wait to learn more and more about what you guys are doing, because you guys are right on the cutting edge.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was fantastic to be here.
It's awesome. Thank you to all of you for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed our conversation. The greatest gift you can give us is to tell your friends to tune in. When this becomes a podcast, if you like us, if you follow us, we'll continue to be able to give you great content and to be able to meet people like Tanja. So we'll come back next week. We'll look forward to seeing you. Thank you very much. Take care.